But let's begin this day where we have for the last 2 days on Wall Street, where stocks are actually rebounding after a volatile trading session yesterday. You're taking a look at the Dow now, which is up about 3.5%. This hour, we're monitoring also Capitol Hill, where the president's trade representative is testifying before the Senate Finance Committee. He's expected to defend the White House's tariff policies. I want to bring in CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady, who's joining me here in Studio 55. Good to see you, Kelly.
Good to see you.
You're here. We're here. We're living. As you said, she walked in this morning and said, we're alive. That's good. And now people are feeling perhaps a little better when they take a look at the market and see that it's sort of rallying. But this doesn't mean we've seen the bottom yet.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, a lot of investors I'm talking to and spoke to yesterday at the stock exchange after we spoke are saying, look, there's more to lose potentially, but there's a couple things that you're seeing happen today. One, there are talks that there might be deals to be had with countries. We heard the Treasury Secretary on CNBC earlier today saying that they're discussing things with 70 countries. Didn't share the list, but investors like to hear that. Investors like to hear deals. The second thing is this is a buying opportunity for those hedge funds, those more institutional investors that are playing the long game, because there are a lot of stocks and companies that you know are going to do well in the long run, like NVIDIA, that this is a good buying opportunity. And finally, I mean, you go back to the days that we have seen the S&P 500, a 2-day loss of over 10%. Happened last week. It's only happened 4 times in the history of the stock market, and you see over the 5 years after that 100% return. So some people are looking at this and saying good buying opportunity, but yes, we could have one little thing, as we saw yesterday, that comes out from the White House or one of our trading partners that sends us all the other way.
Or misinformation that has the market generating false hope. The thing that I'm sort of interested in, Kelly, is that people have rightly been watching the stock market over the last couple of days, but that doesn't really tell the story of the economy. The president is threatening more tariffs against China. The Chinese are saying they are going to fight to the end if the president doesn't impose those tariffs. The worry and the concern, I think, is that no matter how things go, prices are going to go up in this country, and those jobs that the president keeps touting that are going to come back are not going to come back tomorrow. It's going to take years for companies to build up manufacturing in this country, even if they do so at all.
Yeah, that's right. This is something that will take years. It will take hundreds of billions of dollars. There are some industries where, there's excess capacity or factories that aren't being used, where things could happen overnight. But something that I'm hearing so much from businesses is that infrastructure just isn't there. That, okay, great, we want to bring manufacturing. I mean, I'm literally talking to people in the manufacturing space that are big fans of these tariffs, but they're saying the support and the infrastructure isn't there to make that happen overnight. The other thing that I would say is, you mentioned that the market is not the economy. We talk about this all the time. We haven't seen the data that would cause a sell-off like this. It's really just that traders are thinking about the what if and what could it mean if those prices go up.
So one of the things that I found really interesting, you mentioned the infrastructure. I've read reports that the United States doesn't generate enough electricity, for example, to ramp up manufacturing to the extent that China has. That's one thing. The other that I thought I hadn't considered, even though in the back of my mind I knew that this was true, was, for example, a lot of folks are saying, well, I'm just going to buy American. But, for example, I play the guitar. A lot of American guitar companies have plants here in the United States. But what people don't realize is the parts that you build those guitars with, even if they are assembled here in the United States, those parts, those little pieces of machinery, the magnets that go into the pickups, those come from countries that we are now in a trade war with.
Yes, and I'll give you another example. I was at a fabric store right after I was on your show the other day, and I went to a garment manufacturing space, and she said, look, the fabric is still coming from Vietnam, from Indonesia and whatnot, even though we're actually assembling the garment here. So yes, that is very much that is very much true. I want to go back to the electricity point that you made, because I think that is so important.
It's really interesting.
One of the things that we need to make this tariff plan work and manufacturing bringing it here is energy. We don't have enough of it. And aluminum and steel specifically, we want to have that industry growing and bolster that industry here. I was listening to one CEO that said, in order to do that, in order to replace all the steel and aluminum that we get from other places, we would have to increase our production of electricity multiple fold. And so there isn't that piece that's going on in terms of the infrastructure point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and tricky question that the president's going to have to answer. And even when he says, for example, we want Japanese to start buying, importing cars from the United States. Headline, Japanese don't like American cars. There's a reason why they buy their cars and not ours. And so this is all sort of, I think it's interesting to watch what the market is doing, but there's a larger context here that sometimes isn't on display. And I'm glad that you're here to provide it for us. Thank you very much, Kelly. Always great to have you.